The movie event of 2021 is finally out and about for everyone to see. So today we're talking about all the spoilers for Spider-Man No Way Home. Obviously, and in case the title didn't give it away, in case the cold open of the series didn't give it away, this is going to be a spoiler review of Spider-Man No Way Home. Make sure you go experience the film for yourself in the theater. If you haven't seen it, I have a spoiler review right up here. Or in case you want more spoilers, I have post-credit scenes explained right up here. So if you want to join me for those conversations or for this one, start them off in the comments below. Your favorite moments, least favorite, your issues, your favorite parts, anything and everything, throw them down there in the comments below. Because if you like movies and TV, this is the place to be. So consider clicking that subscribe button if you enjoy what you see here, and you won't miss any future conversations on your favorite movies and TV. Now, before we properly get going with spoilers, and once more, final warning spoilers, I actually want to talk about the one thing I addressed in my spoiler-free review that was my issue with the film. My one small gripe with the film, and it is that middle section between the moment, spoilers right now, when Spider-Man traps Doctor Strange in the mirror dimension after an incredible feast for the eyes fight sequence. And then until we get the turn of the Green Goblin and we get going once again. That point in the film, it's fine. There's nothing particularly wrong with it. It's good. But it always felt wrong that Doctor Strange wouldn't be able to get out of the mirror dimension faster. And I felt like the film, through that whole section, just didn't address that enough, and so everything that happens and the lack of Doctor Strange's presence never felt right, and it always felt like this is not how the story should be going between those points when Doctor Strange is trapped and Green Goblin turns. And so even though I like the fight sequence, I love that Spider-Man outsmarts Doctor Strange and uses his biggest asset, which is his brain, against Doctor Strange. To me, the film just never justified it well enough. And so that 20 to 30 minutes of the film just lacked real logic to me. But apart from that, which was my only issue with the film, let's go into all the things that I liked, all the things that I'm assuming most of us at least liked, and let's start with the little spoilers. First and foremost, I do love that Wong is the actual Sorcerer Supreme. And these little details that enrich the world and everything else that is happening in the MCU really justify the inclusion of other MCU characters. And within the MCU, it actually makes sense. The universe needs a Sorcerer Supreme. Doctor Strange disappeared, so Wong had to take over. And now he's a superior to Doctor Strange, and Wong deserves it as well. Another big thing that I like, and it is so nonchalantly addressed, and spoilers for Hawkeye as well right now, the same week that Hawkeye reveals its big bad being Kingpin, played by Vincent D'Onofrio, Daredevil just walks into frame. He is Peter's lawyer, as everyone kind of predicted or assumed or theorized, and it's a really great scene, because it's the first big applause moment of the film, the 2 times I watched it. It's a cool scene that, again, inserts this new character into the universe. It already makes him interact with our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And the scene is just cool because we have a little cool interaction between Daredevil and Happy. And Jon Favreau played Foggy Nelson back in the 2003 Daredevil film, and we get to see a little bit of the Daredevil behind the Matt Murdock when he catches the brick, and it's because he's a really good lawyer. The final small spoiler that I enjoyed was Ned being able to use magic. As we established in Doctor Strange, that is an ability that is present in people. It is just a matter of awakening it, and I love how they do a proper setup for it. And then the payoff is all so sweet, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So in general, what does Spider-Man No Way Home have above all those other very busy Spider-Man movies from before in Spider-Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I'm going to dive a little bit more into that on my Spider-Man movie ranking that is coming up tomorrow or Sunday, so just pay attention to that. Click that bell so you'll know when it's up. In Amazing Spider-Man 2, we have Electro, and we have Green Goblin, and we have Rhino, but all those are disconnected. Same thing again with Spider-Man 3. We have Sandman, we have New Goblin, we have Venom. All of those are disconnected. Eventually, yes, Venom teams up with Sandman, but again, the stories themselves are all very, very separate. They're all their own individual thing. In this, all the villains that come into this universe, this was Peter's doing. This was Peter trying to escape from the responsibility of owning up that he is Spider-Man and try to solve that situation, try to live with it, not trying to take a magical route and grow with that circumstance. And he tries to get out of it. So I love that in this film, all these villains coming through, it is all because of Peter. This was Peter's doing. This was Peter not wanting to face the consequences of what life has thrown at him. And through this story, we get our most personal, intimate, vulnerable look at Peter Parker and the mixing of his Spider-Man life and his Peter Parker life. And nevertheless, Peter Parker, very innocent, just a very good person. His first instinct when he learns that these villains are eventually going to die in their own universes, that they're going to be killed by Spider-Man, he wants to help them. He wants to try and save them. Which in itself, yes, is a mistake, but these are the mistakes that come back to haunt him. And I love that in this film, throughout the capturing of the villains, trapping Doctor Strange in the mirror dimension, which again, can we talk about that fight scene? My god, visually it is insane, and not only is it insane, congrats to Jon Watts for capturing this feast for the eyes fight sequence so well. It's one thing for Scott Derrickson to do it, and do it so well, for creating that visual style, but now another director taking that and bringing that into his own film is stellar. Also really love the mixing of the Giacchino scores. Michael Giacchino, who composed the scores for the Spider-Man movies in the MCU and also did for Doctor Strange, and he's mixing his motifs with both scores and does it really well. But going back to the villains, this is Spider-Man's doing. This is Spider-Man bringing everything upon himself, and it's all this one narrative. It's Peter Parker learning the weight of responsibility, which there is nothing more Spider-Man than that. And of course, we'll get to the real weight of Spider-Man responsibility in a little bit. But I really love the strong core theme throughout the story. And a nice detail that I started noticing around this point when Peter traps Doctor Strange and takes the villains to Happy Hogan's place is that the longer this film goes, Peter's losses and the consequences that get thrown at him for his decision making get bigger and bigger and bigger, while his victories throughout the film get smaller and smaller and smaller. By the end of the film, we know Peter loses much more than he gains in this film. You guys know I was very afraid walking into this film. There's a part of me that would always be excited, but I was worried about the story, and something they did very well is they kept and continued each villain's motivations and arc. Particularly one that's very well done in here is Doc Ock, who's very mean, very miserable, in Peter's own words, because he's not in control of the tentacles around him. They're controlling him, the voices in his head that make him paranoid and make him insufferable. And so the interactions between him and Peter, not only before he gets cured, are very interesting, because as soon as he sees that is not his Peter Parker, he's just confused, and he's not necessarily wanting to kill this kid until the kid gets in the way of his plans, obviously. But once he does get cured, it's just so nice to see that the Doc Ock, the good Doc Ock, that we never got to see interact with Peter as Spider-Man before, because as soon as he turns good, he eventually dies, but now we get those moments. Jamie Foxx gets a lot of shine. He has never been this good as Electro. Electro has never been this good. We continue that thread, that story of him just wanting to be noticed, him just wanting to get respect, him just wanting to be valued and seeking power because he feels otherwise he's not seen. But obviously, by far the best villain in this is not the main villain, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn. The guy does not phone it in whatsoever. Not for a bit. Even as he goes to Feast and talks to Aunt May and interacts with Peter for the first time, the suspicion is always there, obviously, but it's amazing to see him changing the levels in his head, playing the Norman and playing the darker half. And it was just so awesome to see him working with Peter, even by the first time I saw the film, you know what is coming, you can feel it brewing. But it's so nice to see Norman Osborn and Peter Parker working together as scientists. Not the Green Goblin, not Spider-Man, just Peter Parker and the real Norman Osborn, the overtaken Norman Osborn. I also really love how they used the spider sense in this film. The Peter Tingle, I apologize. I love how they use it in this film, how it becomes a recurring theme. And Peter himself doesn't exactly know always what it means. He has to really focus on it when there's a ton of threats around, which is when we take the turn and we get the reveal of Norman Osborn. I really like how it's foreshadowed even moments before with Doc Ock and Norman Osborn talking about, because these villains know each other, they know each other's history, they know what happens to one another when they fight Spider-Man. And so Doc Ock talking to Norman Osborn, oh, you're going to be cured, no more dark half. And you can just hear the change in Willem Dafoe's voice. Yes, no more darker half, just me. But once Peter traps him for a bit and we get the reveal and everything goes to shit. And we get the most brutal Spider-Man movies have been probably since that first one, since that first fight against Green Goblin in 2002 Spider-Man, which is kind of poetic because this is another fight against Green Goblin. It's physical, it's brutal, it's really well done. The stunts are incredible, and you can just see Willem Dafoe's dedication. Even when Peter Parker has him in the head scissors and is punching him, and each punch you can see him smile in different ways and giggling. And it's also a good reminder that when he took the serum in that first Spider-Man movie, he also gained superhuman strength. He's not as strong as the Hulk. I don't even think he's as strong as Captain America maybe, but he's on par with Spider-Man when it comes to physical strength, and them destroying buildings, throwing one another through floors and whatnot. Just one of the best, perhaps my favorite Spider-Man fight sequence, other than the first original Spider-Man, and the train sequence in Spider-Man 2, obviously. He gets battered and bruised by the Green Goblin. Not only that, on an emotional level, he gets betrayed, because he was trying to genuinely help these people. He trusted them. I forgot to talk about the moment where Norman Osborn even says, I'm something of a scientist myself. And the first big emotional moment of the film comes in where Aunt May is trying to help Peter, and the glider comes in. And they fooled me. On the first watch, they fooled me where I thought, oh, she's fine. She was just taken down. As Goblin steps out, we get the meme face of Willem Dafoe, and he throws the bomb. Peter manages to throw it to the other side, but May, turns out, was impaled by the glider. And we get one of the most heartbreaking moments in these movies, where it clicked on me that this Aunt May, the MCU's Aunt May, is working as the Uncle Ben. And the fact that May actually says, with great power comes great responsibility, and they built up to it. They didn't go around it, they didn't cut corners, they built up to it, and they justified it by the end. And it's handled in a very powerful way, with the sound deafening out, and we just sit there with Peter, who doesn't even realize that she's dead, or is in that stage of denial, until Happy himself gets there. And the scene after that where J. Jonah Jameson is accusing him of having created another victim. It's really emotionally powerful, compelling stuff, and gives that dark edge to this film that really brings it up. And when it comes to the emotionality, the potency of the emotionality of this film, is really accomplished right here in May's death scene, and I sobbed like a baby both times. And I'm going to watch it again tonight, 3 times. So I'm ready to cry again on this one. One thing that I haven't talked about enough yet, or at all even, is how this movie does such a great job at strengthening the relationship between Peter and MJ, the trust and how open they are with one another after the secret is out. I think it's really important for both these characters. I think it furthers their arcs beautifully, not only as a couple, which they get you to feel so much for them that when they get to that ending, and we'll get to it, my heart is completely broken. It's a great, beautiful relationship between MJ and Peter, but the trio itself is also so strong from the beginning as they trying to get into college, and then we get all these moments where everyone else just sees Peter as a kid, and Peter makes these dumb decisions, rightfully so dumb decisions, that get in the way of him trying to fix the situation. But he's also trying to go to college. He's stepping into that first stage of adulthood. He's trying to grow up, but there's still much of an innocent, naive, hopeful kid inside him, which is not the case with the other Spider-Man, because I'm getting chills just now talking about this. Because after everything is taken away from Peter, virtually, we go back to the one thing he has left, and that is MJ and Ned. And they're desperate as well after seeing all this, because they just seen that Aunt May has died. And as Ned is saying, "Oh, I just wish you could see him," and he opens a portal. And this is one of those movie moments you will never forget the first time you watch it. You will never forget what you were thinking. You will never forget how it felt to be in that theater. You will never forget how the audience around you felt and reacted, because I never will. Because that portal opens and you see a Spider-Man far in the background. And I wasn't sure who it was. I knew it wasn't Tom Holland. But far in the background, I'm like, oh shit. Oh shit. First of all, they're doing it. It's that confirmation that obviously we knew they were here. I think we were all 99.9% sure. But then there was that 0.01% that we weren't sure if they're going to be here. So when that Spider-Man steps into the portal and takes his mask off, and it's Andrew Garfield, my heart sank, the crowd erupted, and it was a beautiful moment. Not only because the interactions between him and MJ and Ned with the bread and going up the wall, and Peter Parker just geeking out like string theory and multiverse, it's all real. It's really sweet. But now I want to step a little bit outside of the film and just talk about Andrew Garfield and how clearly happy he was, because a great theme in this film is second chances. And you know I'm not a fan of the Andrew Garfield movies. I'm not a fan of his version of Peter Parker. But just as a human being, I respect him and am a fellow huge Spider-Man fan. So throughout this film, to see him so elated to have one more go at this character, and to be able to interact with other Spider-Man, the one that came before, the one that came after, it's just beautiful. It's nice to see him get the second chance, to see him be able to play this character that he loves so much again, in something that treats this character very right. And again, to see him having these interactions, it's a really nice feeling. It just puts a smile on your face, not only because of what is happening on screen, but because of what you know is happening behind the camera. The only thing that was bigger than the crowd eruption when Andrew Garfield takes off his mask is when the other portal opens, and he's in normal clothes, but his face is lurking in shadows until he steps through the portal. And Tobey Maguire, grown up Tobey Maguire, and we'll get to that grown up line that made me choke as well. The interactions of them at first not trusting each other, throwing webs and whatnot, the flip back and into the floor. Just so well done. Just such a great entrance. And such a good focus not on Spider-Man, but on Peter Parker, on the humanity of both of these people. Which, speaking of humanity, leads into the next scene, which might just be my scene of the year, and is for sure my favorite scene, or at least moment in this film, which is when the two the three, sorry, when the three Spider-Men meet on the rooftop. And we get them talking about their experiences, talking about how they became Spider-Man, talking about essentially the weight of responsibility. Because they know what Peter is going through, because they know how much it is affecting him, and they know eventually how it could change him as a person. They've been there, they've seen that darkness, they've experienced that darkness, and Tom Holland is acting the shit out of this scene. And Andrew Garfield as well. And Tobey, they're all are, but we've seen Tobey. We've seen Tobey reach that height of his performances in a Spider-Man film as this character. Andrew never got that chance. And I think we've never seen Tom Holland this good, at least when it comes to him playing Peter Parker. So, seeing them and talking about what they've experienced when Andrew Garfield lost Gwen and what happened to him afterwards, and then Tobey going back to when he became Spider-Man, and again that click in my head, oh shit, this is an origin story for Spider-Man as we know him. For Tom Holland, this is when he becomes the Spider-Man that we know from the comics. It's just incredibly emotional. This moment, not only is it incredibly emotional, clearly not for the fan service alone. Obviously, the fact that they're there is a fan service moment, but how they explore these characters and how they get into the psyche of these characters, of who they are, and how they give each of them their own dramatic weight in their presence in the story shows that there is value to their presence in this. This scene is so good and is so filled with meaning and depth for all three versions of Spider-Man. I didn't care that they didn't do the Uncle Ben thing with Tobey Maguire, which I predicted, I really wanted them to do. The film didn't need it. The film had all it needed for that emotion to be there and for it to be grabbed and fully realized, even though they cheated, because Andrew Garfield's Uncle Ben never said with great power comes great responsibility. But obviously we understand why they did that, and we can all pretend. And so we continue the theme of Peter Parker just being a really good person, because the three of them decide that they're going to cure the villains, but it's just so cool to see them interact, again, as Peter Parker. Throughout that lab sequence, Ned asking about if the others have a best friend, and Tobey saying, oh yeah, he died in my arms after he tried to kill me. And then Andrew looking at Zendaya, and then Andrew looking at MJ and Tom Holland, Peter Parker, reminiscing about what he lost. And again, the focus on their relationship, extremely well done. The emotion that you get from each moment between those two and how well they work on screen together, because obviously they're together in real life as well, really potent. And Andrew talking to Tobey about, oh, maybe it's just not meant for guys like us, and Tobey giving him a little bit of hope, giving him a light at the end of the tunnel, possibly. All these interactions, all these very human interactions focused on the weight that each of these characters is carrying, seeing how emotionally they are affected by this story, and by seeing one another, and by the experiences they have led as Spider-Man so far. That's the real value in their presence in this film. Not just the fact that they're there and cool and we'll see Spider-Man fight together. That's awesome, that's nice. But it's these conversations and these interactions that to me gave it real value. And obviously they did what I wanted them to do, which was showing that Tobey has the best out of all their powers, which is the organic webs. And then Tom and Andrew obviously are astounded and very excited, which obviously Tobey is the best in terms of powers because he actually has the powers of a spider. And leading into the final battle, I love how this scene in the lab swiftly transitions into the next, where they're still talking about the webs and whatnot. We go back to Tobey's back problem from when he lost his powers back in Spider-Man 2. He talks about having a web block and whatnot. And another really sweet moment is seeing Andrew Garfield like having this inside doubt, self-doubt about himself, and Tobey going, you're amazing, you're amazing. He kept on repeating it, which obviously then leads into the battle against Lizard and Sandman and Electro, and it's so awesome, and each of them individually going to cure each of the villains. Sandman is up first, and we get the theme as soon as Flint Marko and Tobey Maguire Spider-Man see each other. Then it's Dr. Kirk Connors, who goes after Ned and MJ because the portal is not closing. And then eventually, finally, Doctor Strange comes out, which I'm like, for fuck's sake. And this is when he sees the three Spider-Man. It's just really cool to see. When Electro is overpowering Tobey and Andrew, eventually Doc Ock steps in and he does the job himself and takes the powers away from Electro. And again, going back to these character moments where afterwards, after each villain gets cured, we have a moment to see the interactions between their Spider-Man and their villains and see the humanity behind all this superpower craziness that we love. When Andrew goes to Max and talks to him, and we get a reference to Miles Morales, how there should be probably a black Spider-Man out there somewhere in some universe. Really sweet moment, and Andrew Spider-Man reassuring Max that he is someone. He's not just a random guy, and he sees him. Obviously, after this, there's only one villain to cure, who wasn't even there up until this point, and in comes Green Goblin, who snatches the box away from Doctor Strange. Not long enough before they get it back, but there's a bomb inside which explodes, and the multiverse starts to crack open, and this is where we see shapes of Rhino, the real Rhino, not Paul Giamatti, not a mechanical suit Rhino. We get the real Rhino, we get Scorpion, and we get Kraven the Hunter as well. And this is the moment of the trailer where Doctor Strange is trying to close everything. And when this bomb explodes, everything starts to go down, and we get the moment we all predicted. It wasn't just me, I predicted it, but I wasn't the only one, where MJ falls and we get the redemption for Andrew Garfield. And again, it wasn't just that he saved her, it wasn't just a cool moment for him. We see how he's emotionally affected by this. We see the toll it takes on him. We see and understand that not only this is important for him, but this is what he doesn't want Tom Holland Spider-Man to go through. Because he doesn't want him to become that dark version of Spider-Man that doesn't pull his punches anymore. But he's about to do that. When he starts fighting with Green Goblin, it's not the best shot fight sequence. And this is when you know Willem Dafoe really did do the stunts and really did do the fights on camera, because they're cutting away a lot from it. I do wish this final fight one-on-one between Tom Holland Spider-Man and Green Goblin was a little bit well shot, but the moments there are there and that hit really hit. The punches are heavy, you feel the impact of him, and he's about to drop the glider and impale Green Goblin, because obviously the best part of Green Goblins is that he goes for the heart, Osborne! He goes for the heart! And he starts to tease Spider-Man about, oh, I took the blow. I took the final blow, but she was there because of you. And Tom Holland's about to impale him with the glider, and Tobey steps in to stop him. And it's a really impactful moment. And I almost thought I predicted that Tobey would die because he gets stabbed. And eventually Andrew throws the serum, and they cure Norman Osborn. But Tobey doesn't die, which is cool. I accept it. It's fine. And so we get to the final moments of the scene, and it's a final decision that Spider-Man has to make. The only way to solve this without any lasting damage to the entire multiverse is to make the adult decision, to carry the weight of responsibility and to deal with the consequences of his actions throughout the film. The mistakes that he has made, there is only one solution, and because of the mistakes that he has made, because of how much things accumulated one on top of the other, now he has to pay the ultimate price. I love that Peter has to deal with this, and he makes the choice. He decides that this is best for everyone, because he tried to find an easy way out throughout this film. He tried to make a decision that would benefit him, but also not cost him so much, and would have been the least consequential outcome. But now he has to face the consequences. He has to be alone. And I love how that theme is present throughout the film, throughout the entire narrative. And we reach this one decision. As everything converges, there was only one outcome, and this is it. And we get really sweet goodbyes to the other Spider-Man. They all get sent back to their universe. We even get a little interaction between Tobey and Andrew, and obviously a devastatingly emotional, even an emotional moment between Doctor Strange and Peter, but it's the goodbye to his friends. Like, the acting on that moment is also fantastic, and his goodbye to MJ and the I love yous and whatnot, everything is done after that. Nobody knows who Peter Parker is. Nobody knows that he is Spider-Man. We get a really sweet moment in May's grave as Happy doesn't know who he is. And then he goes to the cafe trying to tell MJ, trying to tell the truth, and to Ned as well. And he just doesn't have the courage because he sees the gash over her eye. And he realizes it's much more important and is much more practical to keep her safe if she's not around in his life. This is him growing up. This is him understanding the weight of responsibility. Obviously, I want them back together. I will not live in a world where we don't see him back together, so Sony better announce the Spider-Man 4 very soon. But I love the growth that this character goes through in this film. I love what he learns, and I love that he sticks by that. They don't go back on it. There's no magic, even though there is a little magical mumbo-jumbo to solve the issue, it's a solving to an issue that he still has to deal with the consequences. Because of his actions throughout this film, mistake after mistake after mistake, it accumulated, and he has the ultimate price to pay. And I love that in this film. And so at the very end, we get a new suit. Peter is living, paying rent in New York. He's studying for something. I'm not sure if that's for MIT. If you guys know, I'm not American, so I don't know. But if you guys know if that's for any specific school, please let me know. Please add it in the comments below. We got this incredible scoring overture by Giacchino. And Spider-Man now going into adult life as Peter Parker and as Spider-Man. This film is awesome. I really love this film. Again, I addressed my issues right off the bat, and Lizard was done a little bit dirty. There's not too much of a motivation for him besides turning people into lizards, and then there's not even a moment when Dr. Connors is turned back human. So those issues are there. I recognize them. This film is not quite perfect, but I found this film incredibly emotional, incredibly bold, ambitious, and it reached that ambition, and it justified the fan service that it gave us. It justified it in the story, and it gave it weight, and it gave it meaning. And so Spider-Man, to me, has all the qualities that a Spider-Man movie should have. It gave us catharsis not only for Tom Holland's version, but for the previous Spider-Man, for the villains. It continued from where we left them off. It gave them a last hurrah that they didn't have a chance to get before. It has the methodical, slow pace of Tobey Maguire's franchise, the charm and humor of Garfield's, and even the self-awareness of Spider-Verse, even though that one is not present here, but you can feel that little bit of identity that informed this version. Spider-Man No Way Home is just very special. It's very good, but it's very special because it earned all these little elements. It is a celebration of everything we love about Spider-Man, every version. More important, it is a celebration of what it is to be Spider-Man. It understands this character deeply, and I think that's beautiful both within the context of the film and outside. Where does it rank? I don't know. You'll have to watch the ranking that is coming up very soon, either tomorrow or Sunday, but those are my spoiler thoughts on Spider-Man No Way Home. What did you think about it? Love it? Hate it? Like it? Anything in between, throw it all down there in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I know this is a long video, so if you're still watching, I deeply appreciate it. Make sure you check out the post-credit scene explained video I have up, and come back for the ranking video. I also have reviews for Hawkeye, Nightmare Alley, and I'll have a video for Licorice Pizza coming up soon enough. I hope to see you in any of those. Thank you so much for watching, Webheads. You are the best. And so until the next one, love each other, and love the movies.